Hello, welcome to Podcast Kan Bonim. This is Ariel Shemen. I would like to open off this podcast in English for those listening in English. Thank God for the last number of years. My wife and I have had the zchut to deal with shidduchim in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim, and thank God we've had the privilege to have a role in the building of a number of houses in Am Yisrael. Um, Lanhara, we're in touch with hundreds of guys and girls, mostly in the yeshiva world, in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. And thank God it's been going well. For the most part, we've been dealing with English-speaking community, excuse me, for the Hebrew-speaking community. However, myself coming from an Anglo background, as it is, there are a number of Anglos that come to us. And myself, obviously, uh, issue of singlehood and shidduchim and building houses in Am Yisrael is something that I think crosses borders and crosses language barriers. And so, over the past while, we've been putting out podcasts in Hebrew, which you're welcome to listen to with our organization, with our initiative that we put out, Kan Bonim. Anyone's welcome to listen, but I believe that there's a value to contribute for English-speaking listeners as well. Obviously, with a unique התמודדות that going on in the English-speaking world dealing with shidduchim. Um, just give a little bit of a context I spoke about before in other episodes. Myself, as well as being a shadchan and a dating coach, um, I happen to be a sociologist, graduate degree, University of Alabama in Birmingham. Thank God I've had the privilege to also research the subject of finding a mate, relationships, and singlehood in general within the realm of sociology, not social work, and sociology. And I found that it's given a lot of a lot of bracha to those that I work with here in the Israeli world, and I'm assuming that would be the same for those listening in English. Over the course of this podcast, at least, I want to give some perspectives that maybe are less spoken about in the world of shidchanos, mostly because shidchanos, at least from what I've seen in American literature, is mostly dealing with kvetching, probably justifiably so, but I don't think we have to only kvetch. Uh, there's a lot of good things to speak about, and I want to make an effort to try to give a broader perspective, having to deal with finding a mate. And I think having the broader perspective, having the holistic perspective, what's known as a sociological imagination, um, dealing with singlehood dating, or what we call shadchanos, can really give us a little bit of a breath of fresh air dealing with whatever's going on, whether we're single ourselves or uh, children that are single, or we just really care about whoever's around us. Um, so, for this first podcast, I want to introduce an idea that it could be that I'm coining an idea and trying to take credit, but overall, I'm building upon ideas of other researchers and sociologists that have discussed singlehood and finding a mate. In the Israeli dating scene, there happens to be a anthropologist sociologist in Israel who's done amazing qualitative work to discuss and to research really on the field singlehood in the Israeli world. His name is Dr. Ari Engelberg. Um, Welcome to see his literature. He's written a book in English as well, Singlehood and Religion, speaking about singlehood in the Dati world in Israel, particularly in Yerushalayim, but not just. And he goes through, he surveys a lot of literature, and Leonhara really does a great job. I don't know if everyone coming from the Frum Welt will identify with everything that he says, myself included. But I think many of the ideas that he brings about really gives us some paradigms that we can work with and to come to productive conclusions and suggestions. Um, And so he brings about a few ideas from other famous sociologists dealing with singlehood. I'll start now with one of the more famous ones, Anthony Giddens. Uh, if there's anyone that would know his name, is famous in England. He was a chief advisor for Tony Blair once upon a time, 20 years ago. Wrote many, many books and really has done amazing work within the field of sociology. Somewhat progressive, but if peel off some of the things that he says, so then there's a lot to glean. And in his book, written in 1992, if I remember correctly, Transformation of Intimacy, he brings across a lot of ideas, but what I want to bring out is that he claims that in the past 200 years, since the Age of Enlightenment, there have essentially been two major um, pivotal changes in the world of intimacy and relationships. Try to touch on them now, and God willing, in future episodes, expand on them and try to speak about their implications within the world of dating, even within the frum community, and how it affects our perspective on dating within the frum community, whether in Israel or in America or in England or wherever it might be. And in the name of Giddens, it's claimed, and he's not the only one. There are many other historians and sociologists that make similar claims. Um, it says that probably the first most significant change that was done upon intimacy is the concept of choice. The concept that the single is autonomous in his decision to choose who to marry, how to marry, and for what reasons. At least what's claimed. It can be debated, but it's claimed that up until that point, marriage for the most part was pragmatic. It was decided for very dry reasons, so to speak, whether for economic reasons, for political reasons, for familial ties, uh, kinship, whatever it might be. But essentially, the aspect of choice, the perspective of I'm going to choose who I'm going to marry, something that was not predominant in previous generations. I'm talking about more than 300 years ago plus. At least that's what's claimed, and especially I'm speaking about Western society and the broader world. And since the Age of Enlightenment, we're talking about Rousseau and Locke and Kant, and we're dealing with all the ideas of liberalism and individualism, et cetera, which especially those coming from America and from England, obviously. We can speak about all the implications of those ideas um, in the continents that we're coming from. And all of a sudden, the individual is in a perspective of autonomy, is in a perspective of I'm not going to choose because that's what I'm told. I'm going to choose because that's what I think is right for me, because it's my liberty to do so. Uh, and together with that age of industrialization, where there's economic mobility and a person is not tied to his economic caste, a person is able to decide who they're going to marry and for what reasons. It's important to note that this aspect of choice that comes around during the initial age of enlightenment doesn't necessarily entail romance, doesn't necessarily entail intimacy, but it entails intimacy not in the sense of being in love, but in the sense that a family is an intimate decision, it's an individual decision. And the fact that a person has that autonomous choice to decide who they're going to marry makes a big difference. Albeit during the 19th century, parents were still involved, still making decisions, and parents still threw their kids out of their homes because of who they married and things like that. But the fact that it was possible, the fact that it was on the table was a chiddush, was something that was not the case beforehand, and it changed the face of intimacy until today, by all means. Um, during primarily the 20th century, obviously starting beforehand, develops the idea of intimacy, develops the idea of romance. So that's the second point. The Giddens brings out the idea that we want a emotional connection with who we're going to marry, who we're going to have a relationship with, and that emotional connection has a lot of significance in how we're going to develop a relationship. During the interwar period, the 1920s, we see that all of a sudden there are dancing halls and people getting together, even outside of the framework of marriage, which is something that was unheard of within the from context. Obviously, we don't have a lot of sympathy for that, but as a societal phenomenon, it really indicates the significance of intimacy, of falling in love. And we can see during the early age of cinema, how much the idea of romance and falling in love really had so much of a significance in that world. Uh, During the post-war period, particularly during the 60s and the 70s, you have free love, love movement, the hippie movement, and anyone listening that's around that age group can say more than me. Um, but really, during those times, the idea of intimacy and having a loving relationship was something that started to become much more predominant. That was less so the case beforehand. Ad Khan, the 2 points that is brought in the name of Giddens, of Anthony Giddens. Um, the A, society uh, started to autonomously decide who to marry. And second, that intimacy was sought within a relationship. Obviously, these things did not happen overnight, and nothing was bang bam. Something that developed over a number of years, generations, and even hundreds of years. But nonetheless, these different phenomena uh, affected the face of intimacy forever. That was not the case beforehand. By the way, anyone interested in seeing additional literature is welcome to look at the book Marriage, a History by Stephanie Kuntz. Again, a work that is relatively progressive but nonetheless gives a good historical perspective of the face of intimacy and relationships over the past hundreds, if not thousands of years. Um, and she echoes these ideas as well. Not citing Giddens, by the way. Not clear if she was aware of his writings. Um, the third point that I want to bring out is names of Charles Taylor, another famous sociologist that Ari Engelberg also brings down in his works about religious singlehood. And I think it's one of the more predominant ideas that's really important today, and that's the idea of individualism. Individualism, like we mentioned beforehand, in the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment, was something that was really predominant. It was something that was really highlighted in society, but grew over the course of generations. And what Engelberg at least brings down is in recent generations that the taboo of going to someone to therapy is something that is a lot less existent. Why? Because I develop myself as an individual. I develop myself as my own identity. I'm seeking to manifest myself in different ways. Um, Another one of the ideas that he brings down is Maslow's idea of self-actualization, that a person wants to actualize themselves, the person wants to come to a point of accomplishment, that they come to a certain climax. Obviously, that's something that is really significant. That really doesn't have so much to do with a relationship, lichora, but has everything to do with a relationship. Because if I'm not actualized, because if I don't have yeshuva da'at, if I haven't discovered myself, if I haven't developed my own identity, so then how can I go ahead and build an identity with someone else? And that dynamic is something that contributes significantly to the face of intimacy today. So again, the 3 points that Engelberg he draws down from two sociologists. First, the idea of autonomy of choice, autonomy of choice. Second, intimacy, love. And third, individualism, self-actualization. God willing, in the future episodes, we'll expand on what this means and the ramifications of what this does to intimacy uh, in negative terms, but I think more so in positive terms. And how does that contribute to the face of singlehood today? Um, what is it that could be that singles are seeking today? Are they seeking to get stuck in a certain situation? Or are they seeking something that's really positive, something that we might actually see as ideal? Are they looking to be autonomous? Are we today in an autonomous society? Are they looking for intimacy to being in a loving relationship? Are they looking to self-actualize themselves to find their own identity and only then to go ahead in a relationship? These are things that are much more difficult to be critical about and something to take into account when discussing singlehood and finding a mate, finding a bashert, so to speak, which obviously is a subject to speak about in itself, at least in sociological terms. So what does it mean to look for a bashert? Um, so with that, I'll close. First English episode of Kan Bonim. Anyone interested in getting in touch with us, with myself or my wife, is welcome to look at our website, kanbonim, kanbonim, .co.il. In the meantime, the site is in Hebrew. Looking to put it through Google Translate in the meantime till I work through it to put it in English. Also available on Gmail, kanbonim321 at gmail.com. Um, Available in Israeli hours by phone 055-986-0567, 972 in the beginning. Anyone that's not aware. Welcome to be in touch. Uh, Try to help with the shidduchim to give advice for parents, for kids, uh, for singles that just want to build a home. We're here for you. We're here to build. We're here to develop. בעזרת השם, שנראה בבניין ירושלים. כל טוב.